There is a quiet truth that has been whispering to you for a very long time, and it does not shout, it does not demand, it does not force its way into your awareness. It waits patiently, like a loving presence sitting beside you, knowing that one day you will finally be still enough to hear it. That truth is this: your life is not happening yesterday, and it is not happening tomorrow. It is happening now. And the only place you will ever meet God, peace, healing, or freedom is in this sacred, living moment you are breathing in right now. Most of the pain you carry is not actually here. It is memory. It is imagination. It is the mind replaying what has already ended or rehearsing what has not yet arrived. The body sits in a chair. The heart continues to beat. The breath continues to move in and out, yet the mind travels endlessly backward and forward, dragging you away from the only place where grace exists. The past has no heartbeat. The future has no breath. Only this moment is alive, and only what is alive can heal you. You were not created to live as a curator of old wounds. You were not meant to keep polishing the stories of what went wrong, who failed you, what you should have said, or what should never have happened. Those stories feel powerful, but they are weight, not wisdom. They are habits of thought that have mistaken familiarity for truth. And every time you revisit them, you give them energy, you give them life, you invite them back into your nervous system as if they are still happening now, but they are not happening now. They are echoes, and echoes only continue if you keep shouting into the canyon. The ego thrives on the past because the past gives it an identity. This is who I am because this is what happened to me. The ego needs comparison, grievance, pride, regret, and justification in order to feel real. It wants to remind you of your mistakes so you stay small, or remind you of your victories so you stay separate. But your soul has no interest in replay. Your soul only knows presence. It only knows expansion. It only knows truth as it is unfolding right now. When you let go of the past, you are not denying that events occurred. You are releasing your attachment to their emotional charge. You are choosing peace over being right. You are choosing freedom over familiarity. You are choosing to trust that who you are now is not defined by what you survived, but by what you are willing to align with in this moment. Healing is not about fixing the past. Healing is about no longer living there. There is a divine intelligence moving through you at this very instant, coordinating breath, heartbeat, digestion, intuition, and insight without asking for your permission or your worry. That same intelligence knows exactly how to guide you forward if you will stop interrupting it with fear-based thinking. You do not need to manage your life with anxiety. You need to align your life with presence. God does not speak through regret. God speaks through stillness. When you are fully here, resentment dissolves. When you are fully here, forgiveness becomes natural, not forced. Forgiveness is not something you do for someone else. It is something that happens automatically when you realize that carrying anger requires you to keep revisiting a moment that no longer exists. There are no justified resentments because resentment always asks you to sacrifice your peace in exchange for a story. And no story is worth that price. You may believe that holding on keeps you safe, but holding on is what exhausts you. Letting go is not weakness. Letting go is trust. It is saying, I no longer need to drag yesterday into today in order to feel whole. You are already whole. You were whole before the event, during the event, and after the event. Nothing real was ever taken from you. What left was never meant to define you. The present moment is not empty. It is full. It is filled with guidance, clarity, creativity, and love. But you cannot access what is here if your attention is elsewhere. Attention is energy. Where you place it determines what grows in your life. When your attention rests in the now, your nervous system softens. Your body remembers how to regulate. Your mind remembers how to observe instead of control. And your soul remembers why it chose this lifetime. Being with God is not about rituals, rules, or reaching some distant spiritual state. Being with God is awareness without resistance. It is presence without commentary. It is noticing the breath without judging it. It is listening without preparing a response. It is allowing life to be exactly as it is without demanding that it justify itself to you. God is not found in your struggle. God is found in your surrender. Surrender does not mean passivity. It means alignment. It means releasing the illusion that you are separate from the source of life. The moment you stop arguing with reality, peace rushes in. Not because circumstances suddenly change, but because you do. You step out of the role of victim and into the awareness of witness, and the witness is always free. Every time you return to the present moment, you break an old pattern. You loosen the grip of conditioning. You interrupt generations of unconscious living. You teach your mind that safety is not found in control, but in trust. And trust is the language of the soul. Trust says, I don't need to know how this will unfold in order to be at peace right now. The past will try to call you back. It will disguise itself as responsibility, as loyalty, as realism, but watch carefully. Notice how it tightens your chest, how it shortens your breath, how it pulls you out of your body and into your head. Then notice what happens when you come back to now. The shoulders drop, the breath deepens, the heart opens. This is not coincidence. This is alignment. You are not here to perfect your past. You are here to embody presence. You are here to remember that your worth is not negotiable and does not fluctuate based on memory. You are here to live from essence, not from history. The moment you stop asking the past for permission to be happy, your life changes. God is not waiting for you in some future version of yourself. God is with you now, in the ordinary, in the quiet, in the breath between thoughts. When you stop chasing enlightenment and start noticing awareness, you realize it has always been here. You do not become spiritual. You remember that you are. So let the past rest. It has done all it can do. Thank it for the lessons. Release it from the burden of defining you and step fully into this moment. This moment is enough. You are enough. And in this now, free of regret and anticipation, you will find what you have been searching for all along, not a better story, but a deeper presence. And in that presence, you will know without question that you are never alone, never broken, and never separate from the divine intelligence that has been carrying you every step of the way. And as you remain here, anchored in this living instant, something subtle yet profound begins to occur. You notice that the urgency to become someone else starts to fade. The pressure to fix, improve, or defend yourself loosens its grip. You realize that the deepest peace does not come from achieving a future state, but from recognizing the quiet perfection of what already is. The present moment does not ask you to be different. It asks you to be honest about what you feel, what you sense, and what is quietly true beneath the noise of expectation. There is a gentle power in this honesty. When you stop resisting your inner experience, you stop feeding the inner conflict. Thoughts may still arise, emotions may still pass through, but they no longer define you. They become weather moving across a vast sky, and you at last recognize yourself as the sky, not the storm. This is not detachment from life, it is intimacy with it. You are closer to yourself than you have ever been, precisely because you are no longer chasing an image of who you think you should be. In this space, compassion naturally awakens, not the kind that is forced or moralized, but the kind that flows effortlessly when you see clearly. You begin to understand that every human being you have encountered was acting from their own level of awareness. Hurt did not come from malice alone, but from confusion, fear, and unconsciousness. This understanding does not excuse behavior, but it frees you from carrying its residue. Compassion is the recognition that pain is never personal, even when it feels intimate. And as compassion deepens, so does gratitude, not for the events themselves, but for the awakening they catalyze. You see that every challenge was an invitation to remember who you are beneath the roles and reactions. Gratitude becomes less about saying thank you for pleasant outcomes and more about honoring the intelligence that guided you through the experience. You begin to trust that nothing in your life was random and nothing was wasted. The present moment becomes a doorway through which guidance flows. Decisions no longer arise from panic or overanalysis, but from a quieter knowing. You listen more. You pause more. You act less from habit and more from alignment. This is the difference between effort and inspiration. Effort drains you because it comes from the belief that you are separate and must struggle. Inspiration energizes you because it flows from the awareness that you are connected and supported. You may notice that simplicity starts to appeal to you. Not as an aesthetic choice, but as a spiritual one. You feel less compelled to accumulate, to prove, to impress. Your joy becomes less dependent on external conditions and more rooted in inner steadiness. This is not withdrawal from the world. It is engagement without attachment. You participate fully, yet you are no longer owned by outcomes. In the present moment, even uncertainty softens. You realize that needing certainty was never about wisdom, it was about fear. Life has always been uncertain, yet you are still here. Breath has never required guarantees. The heart has never needed a 5-year plan to beat. When you trust the moment, you trust life itself. And life responds by meeting you with exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. There is a sacred humility that emerges when you live this way. You no longer place yourself above or below anyone. Comparison loses its relevance because you are no longer measuring worth. You see yourself as an expression of the same source that animates everything else. This recognition dissolves loneliness at its root. You are not separate, waiting to be included. You belong by virtue of being. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, love becomes your default state. Not romantic love, not conditional love, but an underlying warmth toward existence itself. You find yourself kinder, not because you are trying to be good, but because kindness feels natural when resistance is gone. You speak more gently. You listen more deeply. You forgive more readily. These are not disciplines you force upon yourself. They are byproducts of presence. The present moment continues to teach you, if you let it. It teaches you that peace is not fragile. It does not shatter when things go wrong. It bends, adapts, and remains. It teaches you that strength is quiet, not aggressive. It teaches you that surrender is not giving up, but opening up. And with each return to now, you reaffirm a simple, transformative truth. You are being lived by something infinitely wiser than your thinking mind. So stay here, again and again. When the mind wanders, gently return. When fear arises, breathe and remain. When joy appears, allow it without grasping. This is the practice, and it is also the reward. In choosing the present moment, you choose God not as a concept, but as a living experience. And in that choice, you discover that the peace you were seeking was never ahead of you or behind you. It has always been where you are willing to be. And as this awareness settles more deeply into your being, you begin to sense a quiet confidence that has nothing to do with achievement. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply is. You notice that you no longer feel compelled to explain yourself to the world or to rehearse your worth through effort. There is a grounded knowing that your existence itself is the permission. You are here because you belong here. Life did not make a mistake when it brought you into form. From this place, time feels different. Moments stretch open. You notice details that once slipped past you, unnotice the texture of a breath, the softness of light, the simple miracle of being aware at all. You realize that much of what you once called missing out was simply missing the present. And now that you are here, truly here, there is a richness to even the most ordinary experiences. Washing your hands, walking across a room, listening to another human speak, everything becomes infused with quiet significance. You begin to understand that peace does not require life to slow down. It requires you to stop racing ahead of it. The world can move quickly while you remain inwardly still. This stillness is not numbness, it is clarity. From it, you respond instead of react. You choose instead of defend. You allow instead of resist. And in doing so, you discover that you have far more influence over your inner state than you were ever taught to believe. The ego may still knock on the door from time to time, offering familiar invitations, worry, comparison, self-doubt. But now you recognize its voice. You no longer confuse it with wisdom. You see it as a pattern, not an authority. And with a gentle smile, you let it pass without following it. Freedom is not the absence of ego, it is the absence of obedience to it. In this freedom, creativity awakens. Not the pressured creativity that tries to prove something, but the natural expression that flows when you are aligned with life. Ideas come without strain. Solutions emerge without force. You stop trying to control outcomes and start cooperating with intelligence. This cooperation feels like grace. Things unfold with a timing that feels both surprising and deeply familiar, as if life has been waiting for you to stop interfering. You may notice that your relationships change as well. When you are present, you listen without preparing your reply. You see without projecting your past. You love without bargaining for security. This kind of presence is healing not just for you, but for everyone you encounter. People feel it immediately. They feel seen, not evaluated. and in your presence, they are reminded of their own. There is a sacred responsibility that comes with this awareness, but it is not heavy. It is simply the responsibility to return to presence again and again, not perfectly, not constantly, just sincerely. Each return is an act of love. Each moment of awareness is a quiet vote for peace. And over time, these moments accumulate, reshaping not just your inner life, but the energy you bring into the world. You begin to sense that your life is less about getting somewhere and more about expressing something. You are not on a journey toward wholeness. You are allowing wholeness to move through you. This realization dissolves impatience. There is no rush when you are no longer trying to arrive. You are already here. And here, in this unadorned moment, you discover a profound truth. God has never been distant. God has never been withheld. God has never been earned or lost. God has always been present, waiting quietly behind your thoughts, beneath your striving, beyond your stories. When you rest in now, you rest in that presence. And in that resting, you remember what you are. So continue. Breathe. Notice. Allow. Let the past remain finished and the future remain unwritten. Give yourself fully to this moment, not as a technique, but as a devotion. Because when you are with the present, you are with life. When you are with life, you are with love. And when you are with love, you are exactly where you were meant to be. And in this quiet continuity of awareness, you may begin to notice something even more subtle, an inner ease that does not depend on circumstances cooperating. It is the ease of no longer arguing with what is. You stop asking the moment to be different so that you can finally relax. You relax first, and from that relaxation, life begins to respond differently. This is not because you have mastered some technique, but because you have stepped out of resistance. Resistance was the tension. Presence is the release. You start to see that much of what once felt heavy was never the situation itself, but the story you told about it. When the story loosens, the weight lifts. The mind may still narrate, but it no longer dominates. It becomes a tool rather than a tyrant. You use it when it is helpful, and you set it down when it is not. Silence becomes just as meaningful as thought. In that silence, you feel guided, not by fear, but by a quiet inner alignment that does not need justification. There is a deep kindness that grows toward yourself in this space. You stop scolding yourself for having wandered, for having forgotten, for having struggled. You realize that forgetting was part of remembering. That wandering was part of finding your way back. You no longer measure your worth by consistency or perfection. You measure it by sincerity. Each moment you return to now is enough. Nothing more is required. As this kindness stabilizes, the body responds. You may feel less tightness, less urgency, less bracing against life. The breath becomes fuller. The eyes soften. Even the way you move through space changes. You are no longer rushing to outrun discomfort or clinging to pleasure. You are simply participating. Life stops feeling like a problem to solve and starts feeling like a process to experience. You may notice that fear, when it arises, no longer terrifies you. You meet it with curiosity rather than panic. You feel it in the body, acknowledge its presence, and remain. And in remaining, you discover that fear is impermanent. It cannot survive sustained awareness. It needs avoidance or amplification to persist. When you stay present, fear passes like a wave returning to the ocean. This is where true trust is born, not the kind that hopes everything will turn out a certain way, but the kind that knows you will be okay regardless of how things unfold. Trust rooted in presence is unshakable because it is not attached to outcomes. It is anchored in being. And being is stable. Being is constant. Being does not come and go. You begin to live less from reaction and more from intention. Not intention as force, but intention as alignment. You sense what feels true and follow that quiet signal without overthinking it. You speak when words are needed and remain silent when they are not. You act when action is called for and wait when waiting feels right. This attunement is not passive. It is deeply intelligent. Over time, you may realize that the search itself has softened. You are no longer scanning life for signs that you are doing it right. You are no longer asking for reassurance from the future. The seeking energy relaxes because it has found what it was looking for, not an answer, but a home. The present moment becomes that home, familiar, steady, alive. And from this home, love flows without effort. You do not try to be loving. You simply are less defended, less guarded, less preoccupied with self-protection. Love does not need to be manufactured when the walls fall away. It is what remains when fear is no longer in charge. You see this love not as something personal, but as a quality of awareness itself. You may still have goals. You may still dream and plan and create, but now these arise from inspiration rather than lack. You are not trying to escape the present by reaching the future. You are allowing the present to express itself forward. This changes everything. Even success feels lighter because it is no longer carrying the burden of self-worth. And so the invitation remains simple, moment after moment. Return, notice, allow. Let each now be enough. Let God meet you where you are, not where you think you should be. Because in this meeting, quiet and intimate, you will continue to discover that the life you were waiting for has been unfolding all along, right here, in the only place it has ever been. And as this unfolding gently completes itself, you may sense that nothing more needs to be added. There is a fullness in simply being here, a completeness that does not ask for validation. You are no longer reaching for meaning because meaning is present in the act of awareness itself. This is the quiet miracle when striving ends, life reveals itself as enough. You may notice that gratitude arises without effort. Not gratitude tied to specific outcomes, but a deeper appreciation for existence as it is, for breath, for consciousness, for the simple fact that you are here to witness, to feel, to experience. Gratitude becomes less of an emotion and more of a state of being. It hums beneath everything, steady and calm, like a gentle yes to life. In this state, you understand that nothing was ever missing. The sense of lack was created by attention turned away from the present. When attention returns, wholeness reveals itself. You were never broken, you were distracted, and now, in this moment of presence, the distraction loosens its hold. You come home to yourself, not as an idea, but as a living reality. The future no longer feels like a threat or a promise. It becomes a natural extension of now unfolding at its own pace. You trust it, not because you know what it holds, but because you know who you are being as it arrives. And that makes all the difference. When you are rooted in presence, whatever comes can be met with clarity and grace. You may feel a quiet reverence for life as it moves through you, a sense that you are participating in something vast and intelligent, something that does not require your control to function beautifully. This reverence is not awe from a distance, it is intimacy. It is knowing that the same presence you seek is the presence you are. And so there is nothing left to chase, nothing left to fix, nothing left to resolve before you are allowed to rest. Rest is here. Peace is here. God is here. Not as a concept to understand, but as an experience to inhabit. You do not step into it. You allow yourself to notice that you have always been within it. Let the mind soften. Let the heart remain open. Let this moment be exactly as it is, without commentary. This is not an ending. It is a settling, a gentle arrival into what has always been true. And as you continue forward, carrying this awareness into the rhythm of your days, remember this quietly powerful truth. Whenever you return to the present, you return to God. Whenever you return to now, you return to yourself. And in that return, again and again, you will find the freedom you were never meant to earn, only to remember. There is something important happening right now in this very moment. And it has nothing to do with what you have planned for later today, nothing to do with the unfinished conversations in your mind, nothing to do with the worries you carried into this moment like invisible luggage. Something quieter, deeper, and infinitely more intelligent is trying to get your attention. It is the same presence that has guided you through every breath you have ever taken without your permission, the same force that causes your heart to beat while you sleep and the sun to rise without consulting your schedule. And if you listen carefully, not with your ears, but with that silent place within you that has always known the truth, you will hear it clearly. Stop worrying and start trusting. Worry feels responsible. It feels like care. It masquerades as love, as preparation, as vigilance. But worry is not wisdom. Worry is a declaration of mistrust in the intelligence that created you. It is a quiet argument with life itself, a belief that the universe somehow made a mistake when it placed you here at this time with these circumstances. And yet, everything in nature moves with an effortless certainty that it belongs. The tree does not worry about whether it will bloom. The river does not stress about reaching the ocean. The stars do not lie awake wondering if they are enough. Only the human ego does this, because the ego has forgotten something essential about who you are. You were not brought into this world to manage it through fear. You were not designed to carry the weight of outcomes, timelines, and imagined catastrophes. You were created as an extension of a universal intelligence that already knows how to balance galaxies, how to orchestrate seasons, how to heal wounds without instruction. When you worry, you are trying to replace that intelligence with your own limited perception, and that is an exhausting role you were never meant to play. There is a part of you that already understands this. It is the part that feels a sudden peace when you finally let go of trying to control everything. It is the part that softens when you stop resisting what is and allow life to move through you rather than against you. Trust is not passive. Trust is alignment. Trust is the decision to stop arguing with reality and start cooperating with it. Most of your suffering does not come from what is happening, but from your insistence that it should be different. You replay conversations that are already over. You rehearse futures that may never arrive. You punish yourself with thoughts that begin with what if and end with fear. And in doing so, you leave the only place where peace has ever existed, now. The present moment is not just a point in time. It is the doorway through which all grace enters. You cannot receive guidance in the past, and you cannot live in the future. You can only trust here. God is not speaking to you through anxiety. Fear has never been the voice of truth. Fear is the ego's language, and the ego survives by convincing you that you are separate, unsupported, and alone. But the deeper truth is that you have never been alone for a single moment of your life. Even in your darkest hours when you felt abandoned, confused, or broken, something within you was still breathing, still guiding, still keeping you alive. That was not an accident. That was not random. That was trust happening even when you were not aware of it. Think of how many times you worried about something that never happened. Think of how many nights you lost sleep over outcomes that resolved themselves in ways you could not have planned. Think of how many doors closed only to redirect you toward paths you could not have imagined at the time. Life has been teaching you how to trust all along, but the ego keeps interrupting the lesson with fear. Trust does not mean everything will look the way you want it to look. It means everything will unfold in a way that serves your growth, your awakening, and your return to truth. The universe is not interested in your comfort as much as it is interested in your expansion. And expansion often feels uncomfortable to the ego because it requires surrender. It requires releasing the illusion that you must control every detail in order to be safe. Safety does not come from control. Safety comes from alignment. When you align with the intelligence that created you, you begin to feel supported, even in uncertainty. You begin to sense that there is a larger pattern at work, one that does not require your constant vigilance. You start to notice that when you stop forcing, things flow. When you stop clinging, solutions appear. When you stop worrying, guidance becomes audible. This is not about blind faith. It is about remembering what has always been true. You have already survived every hard day you ever feared you would not get through. You have already been carried through moments that felt impossible at the time. The same presence that carried you then is here now, unchanged, unwavering, infinitely patient. Worry pulls you out of your body and into imagined futures. Trust brings you back home. And home is not a place. Home is a state of being where you no longer need to prove, defend, or anticipate disaster. Home is where you remember that you are not here to earn your worth. You are here to express it. The ego believes that worrying makes you responsible. The soul knows that trusting makes you free. Freedom is not the absence of problems, it is the absence of resistance. When you stop resisting life, you stop fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting yourself, healing begins naturally, effortlessly, without force. You do not need to figure everything out. You do not need to see the whole path. You only need to take the next honest step from a place of inner alignment. The universe does not reveal itself all at once. It responds to your willingness to move forward without guarantees. That willingness is trust. There is a profound shift that occurs when you stop asking, what if this goes wrong, and begin asking, what if this is unfolding exactly as it needs to? That question alone loosens the grip of fear. It opens a space where peace can enter. And peace is not weakness. Peace is power without tension. You were not given worry as a tool for living. You were given intuition, awareness, and an inner compass that responds to stillness, not panic. When you quiet the mind, the guidance you seek rises naturally. But when the mind is filled with noise, the voice of wisdom is drowned out by imagined threats. God does not rush you. God does not shame you. God does not threaten you with worst-case scenarios. The divine speaks in calm certainty, in gentle nudges, in quiet reassurance. If the thought feels frantic, urgent, or fear-based, it is not guidance. Guidance feels steady. It feels grounding. It feels like a deep breath after holding tension for too long. You are being asked today to loosen your grip, to stop micromanaging life, to stop measuring your worth by outcomes you cannot control, to trust that your existence itself is proof that you are supported. You did not create yourself, yet here you are. Something wanted you here. Something still does. Trust is remembering that you are not separate from the source of life. You are an expression of it. And when you align with that truth, worry loses its authority. Fear loses its voice. The mind softens, the body relaxes, and the heart opens. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means you meet them differently. You stop seeing them as punishments and start seeing them as invitations to grow, to release, to remember who you really are beneath the fear. Every challenge carries within it an opportunity to deepen your trust, to strengthen your connection, to dissolve another layer of ego. You are not here to live in a constant state of vigilance. You are here to experience, to learn, to love, and to awaken. Awakening is not about escaping life. It is about fully inhabiting it without fear. It is about realizing that peace is not something you achieve someday. It is something you allow now. When you trust, you stop arguing with the present moment. And when you stop arguing with the present moment, suffering ends. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with what is. Acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is clarity. It is seeing reality without distortion and responding from wisdom rather than fear. God is not asking you to trust blindly. God is inviting you to notice how life has always supported you, even when you doubted it. To see how every ending made room for a beginning. How every loss stripped away something that was no longer aligned. How every delay redirected you towards something more authentic. You do not need to earn this trust. You only need to allow it. The moment you stop worrying, you create space for something far more powerful to move through you. And that power has nothing to do with control. It has everything to do with alignment. Sit with this truth for a moment. Feel it, not as an idea, but as a sensation. Notice how your body responds when you imagine releasing the burden of worry. Notice the subtle softening, the quiet relief. That is your soul recognizing truth. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are unfolding. And unfolding does not require anxiety. It requires patience. Trust is patience infused with faith in something greater than the mind's limited perspective. Today, you are being reminded of who you are beyond the noise. You are not the thoughts that keep you awake at night. You are not the fears that predict disaster. You are the awareness that notices those thoughts. You are the presence beneath the fear. You are the calm that remains when you stop resisting. God is telling you today to stop worrying because worry has never protected you. And God is telling you to start trusting because trust reconnects you with the intelligence that has always been guiding you home. Let go. Not because you are giving up, but because you are finally allowing life to carry you the way it always has. And as you release, even slightly, you will feel it. That quiet assurance, that steady presence, that deep knowing that you are held, guided, and supported, not someday, now. And as you settle into that knowing, something subtle begins to change inside you. It is not dramatic, not loud, not something the world would applaud, but it is real. You begin to notice that the tightness you once carried as your constant companion loosens its grip. The mind, so accustomed to scanning for danger, pauses. In that pause, you discover something extraordinary. Life does not collapse when you stop worrying. It continues. It breathes. It unfolds with a quiet intelligence that does not require your fear as fuel. There is a sacred humility in trust. It is the humility of recognizing that you do not see the entire picture and that you were never meant to. The ego wants certainty before movement. The soul moves first and discovers certainty along the way. This is how growth has always occurred. Every meaningful expansion in your life began with a step taken before you felt ready, before you had proof, before the path was fully illuminated. Trust is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act without letting fear lead. You begin to understand that anxiety has been asking the wrong questions. It asks, what if I lose? Trust asks, what if I learn? Anxiety asks, how can I protect myself? Trust asks, how can I align myself? One question shrinks your world. The other expands it. And expansion is the soul's natural direction. Just as a seed does not question whether it deserves to become a tree, you do not need permission to become who you were designed to be. When you trust, you stop treating life as an enemy to outwit and start relating to it as a teacher to listen to. Even discomfort takes on a different meaning. It is no longer a sign that something has gone wrong, but an indication that something is shifting. Growth stretches you. Awakening rearranges you. And rearrangement, though unfamiliar, is not dangerous. It is purposeful. You may notice that when you release worry, you become more present with the people around you. You listen more deeply. You speak more honestly. You no longer rush conversations toward outcomes. Presence replaces urgency. And in presence, relationships heal themselves. Much of what you feared losing was never stable to begin with, but what remains when you trust is always more real. Trust also invites you to forgive yourself, not for mistakes you believe disqualified you, but for believing they ever did. You begin to see that every detour refined you. Every misstep revealed something essential. The soul does not waste experiences. Only the ego labels them as failures. From a higher perspective, everything has been information, shaping you into a more conscious, compassionate, and awake version of yourself. There is a profound relief that comes when you stop trying to be perfect and start allowing yourself to be authentic. Perfection is an ego concept rooted in fear of rejection. Authenticity is a soul expression rooted in trust. When you are authentic, you do not need to defend who you are. You simply live it. And life responds to authenticity with support, often in ways the mind could never have planned. You may find that trust gently dissolves the need to compare yourself to others. Comparison is born from the belief that there is not enough, that someone else's success diminishes your own. Trust reveals abundance. It reminds you that there is a unique rhythm to your life, a pace that cannot be rushed or replicated. Flowers do not compete for sunlight, they simply turn toward it. And so can you. As trust deepens, patience becomes natural rather than forced. You stop demanding immediate results from seeds that are still underground. You understand that unseen growth is still growth. Just because something has not yet appeared does not mean it is not forming. Much of life's most important work happens in silence, beneath the surface, away from applause. You begin to notice that intuition speaks more clearly when worry quiets down. The guidance you once strained to hear arrives effortlessly. It does not shout, it nudges. It feels like a calm certainty rather than a frantic urge. Trust sharpens your inner listening. It teaches you the difference between impulse and insight, between fear-driven action and soul-aligned movement. And with this listening comes courage, not the loud kind that seeks recognition, but the quiet courage of staying true to yourself even when the path is uncertain. This courage does not require validation. It is sustained by alignment. When you know you are moving in harmony with something greater than yourself, you no longer need constant reassurance. You also begin to see how much energy worry consumed. Energy that could have been used for creativity, connection, joy, trust, returns that energy to you. It frees you to participate fully in your life rather than observing it through the lens of fear. Joy stops feeling irresponsible. Rest stops feeling unearned. Peace becomes your baseline rather than a rare exception. There is a spiritual maturity that comes with this shift. You stop asking life to prove itself to you before you relax. You relax first, and life responds. This is not because you are manipulating outcomes, but because you are aligning with the natural order. Resistance creates friction. Alignment creates flow. And flow has always been the language of the divine. You realize that trust is not something you turn on once and never revisit. It is a daily practice, sometimes a moment-to-moment choice. Each time fear arises, you are given an invitation: tighten or soften, resist or allow, worry or trust. And each time you choose trust, even imperfectly, you strengthen a new inner pattern, one that supports peace rather than anxiety. Gradually, the need to control loosens. You stop gripping life with white-knuckled intensity. You allow yourself to be guided rather than driven. And in that allowing, you discover that you are far more resilient than you imagine. You do not need to predict every outcome to be okay. You only need to remain connected to yourself. Trust brings you back into relationship with mystery, not as something to fear, but as something to honor. Mystery is not chaos. It is intelligence beyond comprehension. When you make peace with not knowing, you make room for wonder. And wonder is the doorway to awe, gratitude, and a deeper appreciation for being alive. You start to feel gratitude not only for what worked out, but for what didn't. Because you can now see how many of your greatest blessings arrived disguised as disruptions. How many of your most authentic chapters began where certainty ended. Trust gives you the courage to say yes to life without demanding a guarantee. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become someone who radiates calm rather than anxiety. Others feel it when they are around you, not because you have all the answers, but because you are no longer frantic for them. Your presence becomes a reminder that peace is possible, that trust is learnable, that fear does not have to dominate the human experience. This is the deeper message unfolding within you now. Not that life will always be easy, but that you no longer have to meet it with tension. Not that you will never feel fear, but that fear no longer gets to decide how you live. Trust restores your authority to your soul. And as you continue to walk forward, gently, consciously, you will keep discovering that the support you sought through worry was always available through trust. That the guidance you begged for in anxiety arrives naturally in stillness. That the life you feared losing opens more fully when you stop gripping it. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a different way of traveling. One where you move with life instead of against it. One where faith replaces fear, presence replaces panic, and trust becomes the quiet strength beneath everything you do. And as this way of traveling becomes familiar, you begin to recognize something deeply liberating. You were never meant to carry the whole weight of existence on your shoulders. That weight was an illusion created by identification with the mind. The moment you loosen that identification, you feel lighter, not because life has removed its challenges, but because you are no longer confusing responsibility with control. You take inspired action where action is needed, and you release the rest into a field of intelligence that has always known how to respond. You start to sense the difference between effort and strain. Effort aligned with purpose feels clean, focused, even energizing. Strain feels heavy, urgent, and depleted. Trust teaches you to recognize this distinction. It invites you to move from inspiration rather than compulsion, from clarity rather than fear. And when you do, your actions carry a different quality. They are less reactive, more deliberate, and far more effective. There is also a gentleness that emerges toward your own humanity. You stop judging yourself for moments of doubt. You stop interpreting emotional waves as personal failures. You understand that being human includes fluctuation, vulnerability, and periods of uncertainty. Trust does not demand perfection. It invites honesty. And honesty with yourself becomes a powerful act of self-respect. You may notice that silence becomes more comfortable. The need to fill every space with noise, explanation, or reassurance fades. In silence, you reconnect with something ancient and wise. You realize that before you learn to worry, before you learn to fear the future, you already existed in a state of natural trust. As a child, you did not question whether the ground would support your next step. That knowing was innate. It has never left you. It has only been covered by conditioning. As trust deepens, your relationship with time begins to change. You stop rushing ahead of your own life. You stop measuring your worth by speed or comparison. You allow timing to unfold organically. This patience is not passive waiting, it is active presence. It is being fully available to what is here while remaining open to what is coming. You also begin to understand that many of your worries were attempts to secure love, approval, or safety from the outside. Trust turns you inward and reveals that these qualities are not external commodities to be earned. They are states of being that arise naturally when you are aligned with yourself. From that alignment, relationships become cleaner. You give without depletion. You receive without guilt. You set boundaries without fear. Trust teaches you to let life surprise you. When you are no longer rigid about how things must unfold, you leave room for outcomes that exceed your expectations. The mind is limited by what it already knows. Life is not. When you stop insisting on familiar patterns, you invite creativity into your experience. Solutions appear from unexpected directions. Opportunities arise without force. There is also a quiet courage in admitting that you do not need to have everything figured out to move forward. This humility opens you to learning. Each experience becomes feedback rather than judgment. Each challenge becomes information rather than condemnation. And this perspective transforms obstacles into teachers rather than threats. You may notice that gratitude becomes more consistent, less dependent on circumstances. You feel grateful not because everything is perfect, but because you are present enough to notice what is real. Gratitude anchors trust. It reminds you that even now, in this imperfect moment, there is something steady beneath the surface, something reliable, something kind. As trust replaces worry, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. The body responds to perceived safety with relaxation. Breath deepens, sleep improves, tension releases. This is not a spiritual abstraction, it is a physiological truth. When the mind stops signaling danger, the body returns to balance. Healing becomes possible because resistance has softened. You also begin to see how worry distorted your perception of yourself. You mistook vigilance for strength and tension for commitment. Trust reveals a different strength, one rooted in flexibility, adaptability, and inner stability. This strength does not harden you against life, it allows you to move with it. There is a moment, often quiet and unannounced, when you realize you are no longer constantly checking for what might go wrong. You are engaged with what is happening now. You are listening, you are responding, and that is when life feels most alive. Not when everything is controlled, but when everything is met with awareness. You understand that trust is not about outsourcing responsibility to something abstract, it is about partnering with a deeper intelligence. You do your part with integrity and presence, and you release the outcome with faith. This partnership restores balance. You are neither passive nor anxious. You are engaged without being attached. Gradually, trust becomes less of a decision and more of a state. You find yourself returning to it naturally, even after moments of doubt. Fear may still visit, but it no longer stays. You recognize it as a signal, not a command. You acknowledge it, learn from it, and then let it pass. And as you continue living this way, something else becomes clear. Your trust does not only affect you, it ripples outward. When you trust, you give others permission to soften. When you remain calm in uncertainty, you become a stabilizing presence. You do not preach peace, you embody it. This is how inner freedom expresses itself. Not through dramatic declarations, but through quiet consistency, through choosing alignment again and again, through remembering each time you forget that life is not happening to you, but through you. And so you keep walking, not because you know exactly where you are going, but because you trust the intelligence that is guiding each step. You move forward with openness rather than fear, curiosity rather than control. And in doing so, you discover that trust was never something you had to build. It was something you simply had to uncover.